Question I get asked a lot is about stringing beads and how much slack you should leave in your stringing material in order for the beads to drape nicely and fit properly on the strand. In today's video, I'm going to give you a few tips to help you get your beads strung and crimped perfectly. Hi there, Sandy here. Welcome to another Friday Findings video at keepsakecrafts.net. So I've strung some beads here to illustrate the problem. I have a crimp on one end, and of course the first end is always easy. You just crimp it. There would, of course, on a piece of jewelry, there'd be a loop here, perhaps a clasp. I have here just 24 inches of seed beads strung on this wire. And what I've done is, if I'm laying the strand out perfectly straight, which of course I can't show you entirely on camera, but trust that all of these are out in a straight line, I trimmed this wire exactly 3 inches from the last bead. There we are, 3 inches. Now watch what happens when we take this strand and we simply make a loop like we were making a necklace. So it would hang down in the front, it'd be curved in the back, and it would be an oval shape. I'll take this off for the moment. I'll just snug all those down. And now measure this wire. And you'll notice that now it's about 2 7/8. So in the curvature of the beads, even with little tiny beads, we have lost 1/8 of an inch. Now let's look at another example with some chunky beads going around a tighter curve. I did the exact same thing here. I strung these beads on it's about 5.5, 6 inches of beads, the amount that you would have on a bracelet, and then left 3 inches after the last bead. Now we'll curve that around like we were making it into a bracelet, pulling those beads, because they're chunky, it's a little tricky, but pulling them as snugly together as we can get them, just like you would want them to be in a bracelet. And now let's measure that. Now you can see that it's even more than 1/8 of an inch is taken up. Not quite 1/4 inch, but 3/16, or maybe we'll call it maybe 4 or 5 millimeters. So here is the problem that often beginning beaders have. I just need to take a quick moment here and say thank you so much to those of you who have decided to support me on Patreon. Patron support is one reason why I'm still able to make videos on YouTube. And don't forget that patrons have the opportunity to get up to 2 bonus videos every month. You add your first crimp, you string your beads, you add your second crimp, and we'll just do it the way we would, which would be to go back through the crimp and leave a loop, or like I said, it might loop around a toggle or a clasp or a jump ring or whatever. And the problem is that they will pull that crimp, while this is out in a straight line, they will pull these beads so that it's tight. Now even lying out straight, you can see that this is a stiff row of beads, and it almost even won't curve nicely into a bracelet. It's very rigid. That's because you didn't account for that 1/4 inch, or in this case more like 3/16 of an inch, that's taken up when you curve it. So see, if I just pull out, there's 1/8 of an inch, so a little bit more, maybe 4 or 5 millimeters. I just leave that little bit of slack, and now when I curve it, it's much nicer. I think what confuses people is that there is no one-size-fits-all amount of slack to leave in your beading wire. It all depends on the size of beads you're using and how tightly the piece is curved, which is why this 24-inch necklace with small beads is going in gentle curves and only needs about 1/8 of an inch slack, but a small bracelet with chunky beads is going in a tight curve and needs more slack. I even experimented with some massive beads. But here's another thing to note, is that the size of the beading hole is going to matter. You picture, I mean, these are what, 1/4 inch beading holes? They're huge. And when you curve the piece around, you can see that wire goes to the other side of the hole, goes to the inside of the hole, and so it actually needs less room. So all that to say, most of the time, in most situations, you're going to need to leave about 1/8 of an inch. With chunky beads, maybe just a tiny bit more slack, but it really has to be determined on a case-by-case basis. So in this necklace, all I would do would be to slide on my crimp, put on whatever findings I want. Now, I know that there is a common bit of direction out there to curve your piece as you're adding the second crimp, and that will build in the slack, and that's a pretty good idea. But if you want to be certain that you're doing it consistently, then actually straighten it out. So I'm going to pull this up snug, and then I'm going to back it out about that 1/8 of an inch. And I can flatten my crimp or using crimping pliers or whatever. And now I have a piece that drapes nicely, and when you look at it, you don't see any gaps in the wire. So that's the goal, is to find that balance between it draping nicely and not having any wire showing. The chunkier your beads are, the harder that's going to be to accomplish, and you may have to accept that a little bit of beading wire may show here or there, and if you have a nice color that matches and you have a good design, it's not going to matter. If you have questions about some of the other tools and findings that we use in stringing beads, check out my playlist in the upper right here, where I've got a whole bunch of videos done on all the different tools and findings we